So Splatoon 3 has been out for almost a year now, and since the release we got the Chill Season, Fresh Season, Wave 1 of the paid DLC, and Sizzle Season. But the one thing that we haven't gotten yet, and don't really know much of anything about, is the Wave 2 paid DLC, Side Order. Most people have just written off the first and only trailer we got as being too vague to make any real sense of what's going on, and just said we have to wait and see when the Side Order actually releases. However, I for one don't want to wait that long, and after overanalyzing the trailer and keeping in mind what we already know about the world of Splatoon, I think I have come up with a possible theory as to what the story of Side Order could possibly bring us. What's happening, guys? Sonic Kai here again with another video, and for this video I thought it would be fun to go through the Side Order trailer again and try to make a possible theory as to what the story could be. So without any further ado, let's go through the trailer one more time, discuss what we see, and try to figure out just what is going on here. The trailer starts out with a panning shot of an Octoling in what looks to be a whited out version of Ingopolis Square. As the camera pans down, several images and small video clips flash on screen. The first thing we see is a small animation of what looks to be something resembling how neurons firing in the brain are depicted. We then get an image of what looks to be a tall room with a window and a weird black substance dripping down from it. There's also something that looks to be a door frame just barely out of frame. Based on what's on the door frame here, it leads me to believe this is an elevator door, which is also backed up by other images we'll see in a minute. We then get another small video clip of weird shapes moving across the screen that instantly reminded me of single-celled organisms being viewed through a microscope, with the next clip looking like a similar vibe to the one before, although in this one the shapes are different. We then get an obscure image of red splatters on a white background, which is honestly kinda creepy and hard to make out. Don't worry though, we'll come back to this. The next image, while hard to make out, it's pretty clear that on the left we see Pearl holding something. I'm not totally sure what this is that she's holding. The closest thing I can think of that resembles this is a power egg, but it's hard to know for sure. Now it was a little harder for me to tell who was on the right. At first I thought it was the Octoling standing in the square, but upon a further look, I think this is more likely Marina in her Team Order outfit from Splatoon 2, seeing as how this Octoling skin tone is much closer to Marina's than it is the Octoling protagonist. Why she would be in her Team Order fit and not her normal one like what Pearl seems to be in, I'm not entirely sure. It's likely just to show that yes, this DLC is going to give us a glimpse at what would have happened if Team Order won the final fest. We then see another video clip, and at first I thought this was a type of coral. However, the way this is rendered actually looks more like a brain. The next image we get is a blurred out variant of what looks to be the same Octoling standing in the square. Notice her outfit. She appears to be holding what looks to be an alternate or possibly modified version of the Octoshot, as well as possibly a new type of bomb in her right hand, or maybe even an ink tank. It's hard to know. There's also this weird blue and green tag on her hip. We'll also talk more about this later. The next image is a bit ominous, as we see a black figure possibly looking at their shadow that's cast on the ground. Based on the silhouette, this looks to be another Octoling, but the ear shape makes me question that a bit. The next image is a landscape shot of the Octoling looking at a row of black spikes, another ominous piece. We then see a side view of Marina in her damp socks outfit without the jacket staring into the horizon. This gives me a similar vibe to the finale of Octo Expansion, with the orange sky behind her. The next image is of the main Octoling looking out of a window of what looks to be an elevator. There's also someone else's shoe on the top left of the image, but it's impossible to know who this could be. The first thing I thought was Marie in her Splatoon 1 idol outfit, but this feels like a stretch. Maybe this is a whole new character. The next image is pretty hard to make out what exactly this is. These round things kind of remind me of a meteorite, but this could also be another type of coral. There's also a washed out figure that looks like it could be our main Octoling, judging by the shape. We then get another landscape image of an Octoling looking up at an old school elevator. What's interesting here is that this Octoling has a different hairstyle, which looks like a longer version of the default one. and pointed ears like an inkling. There's also no suction cups on the hair, which is an interesting detail. We then see a really cool landscape painting of what looks to be a stage concept. The next thing is another video clip of something shrinking. The look of this kind of reminds me of skin tissue. We then get an image of Pearl in her damp socks outfit looking down at us from the white version of Inkopolis Square, before cutting to another mysterious image of a weird form with a red circle on it. Keep this in mind, it'll be important later. Another image of what looks to be another stage concept shows up, with the main Octoling looking in the distance. This kind of reminds me of Undertow Spillway with the design, which is kind of cool. We also see more dead coral and what looks to be black and red ink on the floor. We then get an image of our main Octoling inside of what appears to be an elevator before cutting to this creepy and confusing image. We'll also be coming back to this image, so be sure to keep it in mind. The next image sees our main Octoling on the ground holding her head. This is kind of reminiscent of Octo Expansion, where in the beginning, Agent 8 fell and woke up in the deep sea metro without her memories. We then see this very strange image of multiple Octolings standing in a line, once again very mysterious, but this will be important later. And then finally, we get the iconic image of our main Octoling looking up at us before cutting back to the square as the camera finishes panning down and we get the name reveal as well as these weird tinfoil looking things swimming like a school of fish across the screen. Okay, well that was a lot, but what does it all mean? Well, for one, this should be made clear from the start, and I'm sure everyone and their mother knows this now. This Octoling that we see standing in Inkopolis Square is Agent 8. It's been pretty much confirmed thanks to the final image that we see in the trailer, the fact that this image, clearly depicting the same Octoling, is the 8th image or video clip that shows up in the trailer, and one person on Twitter making the connection to Agent 8 with the final image. So, this is Agent 8. I think we can all agree on that. But now, what could the story be? Well, while not many people have taken a crack at figuring this out, the general consensus right now is that Side Order is going to have cloning as part of its story, mainly making the claim based off this image. Now, while this could definitely be the case, and I'm not at all against the idea, I'd even go as far to say that this is the most likely scenario. I'd like to introduce a different idea, because I don't think this is the only possibility. I think it's also possible that this story could dive into Agent 8's backstory, and that this image is not actually depicting cloning, but actually physical enhancement. Now, why do I say that? Well, here's where the theory comes together. Remember those images I told you to keep in mind during the analysis? Well, let's take a closer look at them, shall we? We'll start with the most obscure one. This image is quite hard to make out. However, if we mess with it a little bit to make things a bit more clear, we can see things at the top of the image that look to be wires and pipes. It also doesn't take image editing to realize that the blob in the bottom of the image is likely the head of an Octoling, possibly emerging from ink. Notice the curved ears and the head shape that looks to be the default Octoling haircut. But what does this have to do with anything? Well, remember in the Octo Expansion trailer, we got that mysterious scene with the male and female Octoling and what looked to be a life support container, which was then reduced to just being the character creation screen? I think this scene and this image are one and the same. I mean, heck, remember Cuttlefish's words right before said screen shows up? You can't remember anything about yourself? Nothing at all? So for that to transition to Agent 8 in what looks eerily similar to a life support container, all while the question of who am I is looming over her the whole time, makes things a little suspicious. This is very clearly meant to be a memory, a piece of Agent 8's past long forgotten but still there, deep down in a blur. Why else would this be our character selection screen? This clearly has some importance to Agent 8's story. Otherwise, the devs wouldn't have made the conscious decision to include this in the game to some capacity, even if it was clearly supposed to originally be a bigger part of the story. But this just proves my point even further, that maybe they left it out so they can save it for something else. Wouldn't be the first time. There's always been a bit of emphasis that Agent 8 is special in some way, from her being considered worthy of trying the tests as well as being one of the very few to actually pass said tests. Throughout Octo Expansion, there has always been some kind of essence in the air of Agent 8 being special, and I think it's because she has undergone some kind of physical enhancement to become a better Octoling warrior. Think Captain America type stuff. And I think that's what's being depicted here in this image. This also brings me back back to this image that people always turn to when they say that the story could have something to do with cloning. But again, taking the idea that this is depicting physical enhancement or biological modification of some kind, you can also see that as being the message as well. Notice how each iteration keeps getting more and more complete as we move further to the right? To me, this doesn't depict cloning, but some kind of evolution. The evolution being from perhaps getting some upgrades to your body? This same logic can also be applied to this image. I think this is actually depicting blood, showing how maybe whatever enhancement Agent 8 has undergone has something to do with something in her blood, as in there's something in her blood making her stronger. And that's not all. There's even another hint to this. Here in this image, this was pointed out by X user Metatone Zone, that the spiky imagery in this picture actually resembles hostile nuclear warning signs, which is interesting considering in other meteor? Get it right, Kai. Which is interesting considering that in other media, radioactivity or nuclear experiments have turned people into physically enhanced beings, like the Hulk and Spider-Man. And it's not like I'm just pulling this out of the bag either. This whole idea of wanting to create a superior being has been a thing since the series began. The most obvious example being Tartar, saying that his plan is to use the supreme DNA to create the ultimate life form. Eat your heart out, Shadow. Mr. Grizz also expressed a similar desire, creating the fuzzy ooze to bring mammals back to being the dominant species. Yes, even DJ Octavio has a motive along the same narrative. The whole reason he stole the great Zapfish was to give his people power and take back the surface, proving Octarians as the superior beings. It's when you look at the trailer through this lens that things start to make more sense. The random clips of single-celled organisms, the square and by extension the whole area we traverse having dead coral around it, because yes, white coral is actually what coral looks like when it dies, which again is something I think everyone knows at this point, and the images that depicted deformed and sometimes unrecognizable octolings. These are all experiments gone wrong, or test subjects who didn't receive the desired result and have just been left alone to suffer or waste away. Agent 8 is one such experiment that came out successful, and that's why she was sent, or was going to be sent, to the Deep Sea Metro to go through Tartar's trials and ultimately be blended and added to the Supreme DNA, which of course is a fate we avoided. Now I suspect that we'll be going back down to learn just what happened to us, and that's what the tower is going to do for us. Take us back down to where everything began, and we'll finally get to see just what Agent 8 endured in her past. And now, I think we not only have a hint as to what was done to give her the enhancements, but also how she got those enhancements. Let me turn your attention back to this blurry image of Pearl and Marina. Remember earlier how I said it looks like Pearl is holding a power egg? Yeah, that's it right there. That's the source of what the enhancements originated from. I mean, come on, is it really a stretch? We already know the golden eggs can have some biological effects on Inklings thanks to Splatoon 3's campaign. Since the power eggs are collected from the same source, I don't think it's a stretch to assume they could have a similar effect if manipulated properly. I mean, they're literally the currency that we use to go through Alterna in Splatoon 3's campaign. Heck, it's even in the name. When you hear power eggs, doesn't that give an idea that they could possibly be the source of some supernatural abilities? Well, supernatural by Splatoon standards. And yes, we do actually see some hint of Agent 8 possessing some unique abilities. This being in Agent 3's boss fight. No, not that one. This one. Something that a lot of people, including myself, overlooked is that Agent 8 never killed, or splatted in Splatoon terms, Agent 3. All Agent 8 did was knock her out, which is an interesting detail because we've never actually seen an Octoling or Inkling go for the in-between before. It's either been shoot to kill or go friendly fire. There's never been such a level of control that they're able to knock out while shooting their ink but not kill. And no, Octavio doesn't count, cause it's already been established that he's stronger than the average Octoling. And looking at the force in which he's hitting his machine when we attack him, it's pretty clear that we're still shooting to kill in that regard. Plus, we knocked off Agent 3's armor when we dealt the final blow to knock her out, so she had no protection against our attacks. This is definitely something to have a note of, and I think this does prove to some extent that Agent 8 has something different going on about her. So with all that out of the way, there's just one question left. Who's behind it? Well, I think there is a possible answer. If we go back to this image, we get a potential answer. At first I thought this was maybe some kind of salmonid leader, and this could still very well be the case. However, I have an idea that this is actually Tartar. What makes me think this is because of the red eye. There's a piece of concept art of Tartar that shows a weird circular object with a red light on it. I think this is the actual form of Tartar. As an Octo expansion, the telephone isn't actually Tartar's true form. He took that form to trick the Octarians into thinking that he was one of them so as to not be attacked. And I think he's doing a similar thing here, disguising himself as a salmonid so as to not be attacked by them, and give him the ability to take their power eggs. This is Tartar's entire operation. He performs experiments on the Octolings, or had Octavio do the experiments on them, to make them better, stronger warriors, and for every successful iteration, he then sends them to the Deep Sea Metro to have them take part in the tests, giving them the false hope that they can leave, and once they've proven themselves, he then blends them up into the Supreme DNA to make the ultimate life form. Whether this is an operation that's still underway, or it was something from the past, I don't know for sure. It felt pretty vague at the end of Octo Expansion whether we actually ended Tartar or not, though I doubt this would be continuing up to this point, as DJ Octavio has no reason to do this anymore since his people and the Inklings are at peace with each other now thanks to Splatoon 3's campaign. And there's also the possibility that we did in fact finish off Tartar, but the theory is still viable either way. In fact, remember this image of Agent 8 where there's this weird blue and green tag on her? Doesn't this look eerily similar to the Supreme DNA or sanitization? Have a think about that. And then, with all this discussed and on the table, all this can then circle back and possibly solve another mystery of the franchise, a mystery that has plagued this world from the beginning, one that Splatoon theorists even today haven't been able to solve. What mystery is that? Well, take a look, or rather, take a listen. That's right. The screaming, the loud banging, and wailing that you hear in the boss arenas of Splatoon 1 and 2, these are the sounds of the Octolings getting turned into super soldiers and getting blended into the Supreme DNA. This is the answer to the greatest Splatoon mystery of all time. Now, is this a completely solid theory? No. There are holes in this theory for sure. This whole thing is based on limited information and a lot of assumptions. There are plenty of other ways the story could go, but do I think this is a scenario that could very likely take place? Absolutely. It would be a great way to connect everything. Heck, maybe Tartar learning about the use of power eggs is what inspires Mr. Grizz to use the golden eggs to make the fuzzy ooze. The possibilities for this direction are endless. But this is all just theories and speculation, and I am not expecting anything I've said here to actually happen. But I do feel that this is indeed a likely scenario. We'll just have to wait and see what direction Nintendo goes in with this story, and I'm very excited to see what Side Order does with this story. But like I said, there's a number of ways the story could go, so what do you think? Do you agree with my theory? Do you have your own ideas as to what Side Order could be about? Let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching this video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on new uploads. But again, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.